Hello again. For those of you who are just joining me, here I'll be reviewing the 23, yes 23, Studio Ghibli movies in no particular order. What you need to know is I'll be reviewing these spoiler free. They'll be based mostly on the Japanese language version with English subtitles. And I would highly recommend you watching episodes 1 and 2 first of all to see the movies we've reviewed so far. However, if you're wanting to jump in just here, that's fine. I'll give you 3 seconds before we review the list showing the movies that we've reviewed so far. 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's go. For the 7th movie I'm going to review, let's talk about 1992's Porco Rosso, ranking in at number 15 on my list. Now, as I've touched on before, movies 18 to 11 are mostly very close together, only the slightest of differences separate them. So if you're not happy at this movie being ranked so high or so low, you can move it down to 18 or 11 in your mind if you like. Porco Rosso tells the tale of a man who's a pig. Nobody really comments on how strange this is. He's literally a pig, he's not just a chauvinist. Everyone else in the world is definitely human, so the fact this anthropomorphic being is flying around the skies doesn't seem to faze anybody is a bit of a shock to the system. It took me a few attempts to get into this movie. I tried to watch it a few times when I was younger. I tried to watch the Japanese language version, the English language version, but I'm glad that I did finally sit down and watch it all the way through. This is another movie by the acclaimed Hayao Miyazaki, and he sprinkles in some good humour amongst all the nonsense that's going on. The film delicately walks the line between two of his hallmarks. There is the love with flight and aviation, and there is an ongoing war in the backdrop. The main rivalries in the film are rather fun as various characters compete for their love and attention. There's a great interplay between the characters which I fully enjoyed. The movie is endlessly quotable. There's a lot of really stupid one-liners which make for great memes if that's the kind of thing that you're into. And the ending itself is top tier in terms of Ghibli ambiguity, so there's something you could cross off your bingo cards. However, sadly for me, the tone just slightly misses the mark on a few occasions. The historical wartime background action doesn't really gel with what's going on in the main thoroughfare of the movie. The main story is quite nonsense, to be honest. This pigman flying around the sky, battling pirates, and his kind of ongoing battles with them seem to be aimed at a young audience. Then there's the romantic subplots which seem to be aimed a little higher at the kind of young adult market, and the historical war in the background seems to be aimed even higher still. It seems like a movie that can't decide who it's for, so it's aiming for 3 different demographics at the one time. That being said, I personally did enjoy all of the elements on their own. I just feel that they take away from the overall memorability of the film. I would recommend watching it. However, you might come away thinking, oh, I enjoyed that film, you just might not remember exactly why. Let's transport ourselves forward in time now to 2004, to an absolute classic in the Studio Ghibli repertoire, and another movie from Hayao Miyazaki. I'm talking about Howl's Moving Castle, the first movie to feature in our top 5. This movie is quite simply a masterpiece in every way, shape and form. All of the elements come together perfectly here. It is beautifully animated, it's well acted, both the Japanese and English language. It's a deep film with a relatively unique plot, and it's stuffed full of unforgettable characters. Even so-called background players like Marco are more fleshed out than a lot of main characters in a lot of films. And a special shout out goes to my favourite character of all, Turnip Head, an enigmatic scarecrow that somehow manages to shoehorn himself into the plot whenever he feels like it. I'm going to give my opinion on the characters for the next short while, although it won't spoil elements of the plot. You may want to skip ahead if you haven't seen any of the movie whatsoever. However, if you have seen it, then stick around. For those that are skipping ahead, here's the timestamp. I'll give you a few seconds to move on. Okay, here we go. Well, what a hero we have. Sophie, who is plain, as the movie tries to put it, has become cursed into looking like an old lady. The spell may be a metaphor for how she feels inside, or it may be a topical conversation starter on how much weight women put into their looks and presentability to society as a whole. Regardless, she embarks upon a journey to try and find somebody who can lift the spell for her, a man named Howl. Howl. Was there ever a character so complex as Howl? To this day, I still can't decide if he's nice and well-meaning, or if he's arrogant and vain, if he's meant to be a hero or a villain or somewhere in between. I just can't make my mind up on the guy at all, and I think that really adds to the enduring quality of the movie. While he's off selflessly fighting wars without any stake in either side, at one point declaring it doesn't matter what side the battleships are on, they're battleships and need to be destroyed. He is also very standoffish and at often points rude, treating his friends as servants. The movie's definitely meant to make you feel as if you're falling in love with him, but to this day I still can't decide if that's meant to be a good thing or not. Another warning now, if you're still watching, I will be discussing some plot spoilers for the next few points, so skip ahead to that timestamp if this is a movie you've not seen before and want to go in blind. Give you another few seconds to do that. Okay, here we go. The only reason I wouldn't give this movie a perfect rating, and trust me, it's as close to it as possible, the ambiguity of all the characters is definitely a huge plus point for me. But it just slightly falls one step behind the other 4 movies in my top 5, and the reason for that is the ending. You see, the story gets a bit muddied as the papers tell us that the war's over, and yet on screen we still see a war. Sophie wavers between young and old throughout this whole section for no apparent reason whatsoever. A literal Deus Ex Machina appears to tie up all the plot threads in the laziest way possible, although I suppose if this movie was made in 1994 the plot threads just wouldn't be tied up at all, so that's a step forward I guess. And Sophie just begins kissing everybody. It's such a random ending, and it takes it, you know, if I was scoring out of 10 it would take it from a 10 to a 9 basically. However, that's all relatively minor in the grand scheme of things. I am definitely recommending this for the characters, the animation, the sound design, the plot, the art style. Everything about this movie is definitely enough to warrant a recommendation to anybody. It's also worth noting that the English language version does a good job explaining a few things better in several scenes than the Japanese original does. So again, if you're put off watching movies in Japanese, I'd recommend the English one. You won't be lost whatsoever. This gets a very big thumbs up from me. Now, while the majority of Studio Ghibli films have been helmed by either Isao Takahata or Hayao Miyazaki, there are a few films in the catalogue which were directed by neither of them. I'd like to talk about 1993's Ocean Waves, a movie that was designed for TV as opposed to cinema, and was meant to be a vehicle for the younger animators and directors in Studio Ghibli to kind of prove their worth. This movie comes in at number 16 on my list, and a fair few Studio Ghibli fans would say that's far too high. It was a project that was meant to be quick and cheap and easy, and it ended up going over time, over budget, and a lot of people feel it's very lacklustre. The experiment largely failed, yet I've placed this seeming lightweight film over The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, and I'd like to explain why. At a brief 1 hour and 10 minute runtime, I found this a brilliant departure from some of the longer films in the Studio Ghibli catalogue. A lot of the movies on this list do feel like they've been bloated to try and enhance the runtime somewhat for a cinematic release, whereas this movie just cut straight to the point. It absolutely flies by. The animation is of a lower quality than you'll find elsewhere. It's largely enjoyable, but you will notice a couple of imperfections and missing details, particularly in facial reactions in some scenes, but it's not so much that you can't cut some slack. There is also this rather strange white border that appears on voiceovers, flashbacks, that type of thing. It's a strange artistic choice. I didn't agree with it, but I can understand that this would be the type of project you do some experimentation on. With that out of the way, the plot is largely inoffensive. It's typical TV movie fare. However, it hides within it some subtle nuances which you wouldn't really expect from the early 90s. You've got teenagers coping with the breakup of family, troubled romances, and inability to fit in. There's a few really shocking scenes which I can't describe without spoilers. However, if you watch this film and find yourself gasping at some points, Imagine watching it back in 1993. If you put that side by side with The Tale of the Princess Kaguya and ask me to pick which is objectively the finer piece of art, then Kaguya is going to win 100 times out of 100. However, despite being a short film, Ocean Waves has certain deeper elements which I think are worth exploring and discussing, and just as something that I would put on to enjoy rather than dissect for its artistic quality, I would say Ocean Waves just slightly edges it for me. So some big films there to digest. Is Ocean Waves a failure for you? Was Porco Rosso iconic or a complete dud? And most importantly, do you fancy Howl? Comment below with your answers. Feel free to share this video, and please, if you've been enjoying it and haven't already, consider subscribing as well. I've been Chris, and I hope you're looking forward to episode 4 of the Studio Ghibli movie review series.